We have quite a religion, don't we? Quite a unique religion. Have you ever tried explaining it to someone only to stumble as you define it because it just can't be neatly summarized? Anyone? Now, I know our share marketing team's been wrestling with that as they've sought to promote us in simple, clear terms. We don't fit neatly onto a bumper sticker or into a 30-second elevator speech. So what are the essential qualities of Unitarian Universalism? What can we expect from this beautiful but complex faith of ours? Now, people tease us and say, well, it's not really a religion because we don't have creeds or set beliefs. For most people, religion means a defined belief in a specific god or gods with particular rules and norms, and often a higher authority that tells you what's okay and what's not. But that's not necessarily what constitutes a religion. If we go back to the root word for religion, the Latin religare, which means to bind together, then we are very much a religion. We are a religion bound together by a set of core qualities. Reverend Mark Morrison Reed said it this way: the central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There's a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. So what are these bonds that bind us? What are some of the essential components that we're likely to find in any Unitarian Universalist congregation? What can we actually expect from our faith? Well, I believe we have 7 essential core qualities in Unitarian Universalism, or the 7 expectations, as we'll call them today. They are freedom, vision and values, action, community, spiritual growth, and love. So the first is freedom. One of the most important and unique aspects of our faith, and what most sets us apart from other religions, is that we don't assume or enforce a common identity or belief system. We welcome all people of goodwill, no matter what your spiritual beliefs, your background, your culture, or identity. We offer you the freedom to be who you are, to choose your path through life, and worship in a way that is authentic to you. We encourage freedom of thought, freedom to use science and reason as a lens through which to understand life. We support freedom to explore the great mystery of life, investigate the inexplicable, and determine your own truth and meaning. You have the freedom to ask questions, to doubt, and to challenge. You may choose to pray or not to pray. There is no one truth that we'll insist upon. Rather, we encourage self-responsibility and integrity within that freedom to ask and answer questions in a way that makes sense to you without harming or ridiculing others. In fact, we encourage challenging the status quo if it will help us grow into wiser, more evolved beings. Not just for the sake of being a contrarian, though. So our 450-year history, going back to the 1500s in Europe, attests to a faith that places questions above absolutes. These questions were mostly seen as heresies and began with challenging the dogma of the Catholic and emerging Protestant faith. Is there a Trinity? Is God judgmental or rather all-loving? Does hell exist? Is the Bible actually the absolute word of God? Do we need to believe alike to love alike? And many more. And then as we wrestled with these questions over several hundred years, that evolved into questioning the nature of the divine and whether the traditional Judeo-Christian understanding of God resonated for us. Freedom led the transcendentalists to ask whether the divine could be experienced in other ways. And eventually, humanist Unitarians began challenging the very existence of God. I wonder if you've heard this familiar you joke. A traveler couldn't find the local Unitarian Universalist church. After looking in the center of town and in the suburbs, she drove far out into the surrounding countryside. She finally saw a farmer and asked, "Am I too far out for the UU church?" And the farmer's reply is, "Nobody's too far out for them." Throughout our history, we've always pushed boundaries. We've questioned the status quo and innovated. Revelation has never been sealed for us. Rather, as Emerson encouraged us, we each get to pass experience through the fire of thought. Spiritual truths are an ongoing discovery, even for me as a minister. There is no fixed truth for us. And those of you who've come from more dogmatic religions know what a gift such freedom is. Because only when you're given freedom can you genuinely be yourself. Can you be authentic? Can you be a whole human being? But that freedom is most powerful when it is guided by a clear vision and values. Now, many people think we're the religion where you can believe anything you want. But can we really? It seems to me that when we look closely at our principles and what they demand of us, we can't actually just believe anything we want. Our principles call us to support and act on a powerful vision for a better world and embrace their values. Now think about our principles for a moment. And if you're new here, they're printed on the inside of your order of service. It seems to me that 2 of our principles are about shared vision and the other 5 about the actions that we take to live out those ideals and values. And the 2 principles about our shared vision are our first, which is the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the 7th, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Now, if we agree that all human life has worth and dignity, and that we're all interconnected, that will profoundly inform how we live, won't it? The inherent worth and dignity of every person means we accept and include everyone as an expression of human potential. Everyone. And that's hard to do. That's a profoundly aspirational principle, to see the worth and dignity in everyone, even in our enemies, or people who do unspeakably awful things. It calls us to learn how to forgive one another, to seek understanding even when it's hard, to accept our own flawed nature amidst our inherent worth, and open our hearts to each other. It calls us to see the divine spark born in every one of us. It calls us to look beyond people's behavior and find their original goodness. Living into this vision requires spiritual growth as well as personal and collective responsibility and evolution. Now, our other 5 principles, I believe, help us work towards these 2 cornerstone visions and set out how we covenant to be together. They give rise to values, values such as integrity, honesty, acceptance, inclusivity, kindness, listening, growth, self-reflection, equity, compassion, justice, and peace. Our call to justice, our work for transformation, our insistence on a growing love for humanity and our planet, our quest for truth, all emerge from these values. They're inspired by our 1st and 7th principles, not by believing anything we want. Unitarian Universalism offers us an inspiring vision of beloved community in which people treat one another with dignity and respect, with care and kindness, mindful always of our interconnectedness. A world in which people's souls are nourished, their hearts are full, everyone is treated well and has enough to sustain them. And living into such a vision calls us to action, doesn't it, my friends? Which is our 4th quality, action. Now, you've heard it said many times, perhaps, that we are a faith of deeds, not creeds. Our vision and values call us to action and service to humanity. If we truly behold all the inequities in the world affecting our fellow humans, we will want to work for justice. Am I right? Inspired by great teachers such as Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and Jesus, who put their words into action, we will want to put our hearts, our minds, and our hands to work to create a better world for all. And since we're all interconnected and trust in everyone's inherent worth and dignity, then we must work for everyone's well-being and liberation. Are you with me? We do that through the many justice movements of our faith. In our congregation, we have justice ministry teams which you can get involved with in racial and cultural justice, in economic justice, in gender, LGBTQ plus justice, and in our work for climate. In our wider faith movement, we have numerous more justice programs in which to participate. Side with Love, Uplift, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, Allies for Racial Equity, Love Resists, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and the UU College of Social Justice, among others. And I encourage you to go to uua.org to explore these further and see what you might wish to get involved in. We offer numerous ways for you to enact your faith. But this action is more powerful and effective if it is born out of a community such as this, which is our next quality, community. Community gives us a place to belong, a place to enact our values, to explore our questions, to challenge our perceptions and strengthen our vision. You can't practice Unitarian Universalism in a vacuum. It is predicated on being in community and learning what it means to be human from multiple perspectives. Our congregations give us a place to be held in difficult times and celebrated in joyous times. Our communities offer us compassion, care, and healing when we're struggling. And they challenge us with accountability and motivation when we need inspiration. Community gives us a chance to practice living in right relationship with one another. and to exercise our covenants, which require us to treat each other with dignity and respect. In community, we get to practice accepting one another exactly as we are, with all kinds of different people, folks from different generations, socioeconomic backgrounds, races, and gender identities, people whom we might not come across in our individual lives. I remember speaking with a trans woman in one of my previous congregations who felt so grateful to be accepted for all of who she was, so that she could explore her leadership skills and put them to work as part of her community. We're a place where everyone who cares about humanity can find a sense of belonging, express their talents, and be their whole best selves. Community is at the core of who we are, but we must remember that we're not just a social club or a political action society. Which brings me to our next quality. Does anyone remember it? Spiritual growth, yes, well done. Spiritual growth. If you're part of a UU community, you're expected to grow spiritually. Don't just listen to spiritual teachings, but practice them. Challenge yourself to evolve into the wisest, most centered, most compassionate version of yourself. Now, the beauty of our faith is that we get to draw from all spiritual sources that have evolved over millennia and unearth what nourishes our particular souls. We don't have to adhere to specific beliefs or creeds. You can have Buddhist, Christian, pagan, Hindu, Jewish, humanist, or atheist beliefs and still be a Unitarian Universalist. You can find the path that is most authentic to you and allow it to evolve as you grow and change. But we do expect you to take this aspect seriously and grow spiritually. We expect you to find a spiritual practice that helps you transform and center yourself in this tumultuous world. This is what differentiates us from a nonprofit that does justice work. We have a spiritual foundation to our work. A congregant recently asked me, well, do we have a theology that we share? Well, theology comes from the Greek word theos, the male god. So maybe not. I remember in seminary we used to talk about theology, to be more inclusive and embrace the feminine aspect of divinity as well. But theo or theology is broader than that. It refers to the discussion of religious ideas and principles, and we certainly do that. Here's another UU joke for you. A visitor to a Unitarian Universalist church sat through the sermon with growing incredulity at the heretical ideas being spouted. After the sermon, a congregant went up to the visitor and asked them, "So, how did you like it?" "I can't believe half the things that the minister said," sputtered the visitor in outrage. "Oh, good, then you'll fit right in," replied the member. Here's what theologian, Unitarian minister, and professor at Harvard Divinity School, James Luther Adams, said that we can expect from our liberal faith. He said this around the time of World War II. The prophetic liberal church is the church in which persons think and work together to interpret the sign of the times in light of their faith. All members share the common responsibility to attempt to foresee the consequences of human behavior, both individual and institutional, with the intention of making history in place of merely being pushed around by it. Only through the prophetism of all believers can we together foresee doom and mend our common ways, he writes. It seems very apt for these times, doesn't it? Foresee doom and mend our common ways. In his book, The Prophethood of All Believers, JLA, as he is fondly called, insists that all of us, minister or not, need to take responsibility for our faith, our beliefs, and our actions, so that we can all be leaders as these difficult times call on us. And that, my friends, requires us to do our spiritual growth work. Which brings me to our final quality. Who remembers that? Love. That's on everybody's lips. I saved the best for last. Spiritual growth increases our capacity to love. Some of you who were here a few weeks ago might remember the meditation we did where we imagined unveiling our hearts and opening our hearts, seeing the world from our hearts. These other qualities would mean nothing if it wasn't for an underlying foundation of love that we feel and share. A love that motivates us, a love that guides us, a love that calls us to account, a love that inspires us, a love that holds us, a love that calls us to our highest selves. At the core of our faith is how we put love into action in this world, both personally and collectively. In fact, I often use that as an elevator speech. We are a faith that puts love into action. So perhaps it's less about what we can expect from our faith and more about who these 7 expectations call us to become. It's less about getting something and more about transforming ourselves. The great German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe sums up one of the benefits of being gathered in conscious community. If you treat an individual as he is, he will remain how he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be. That, my friends, is our opportunity in Unitarian Universalism to become what we ought to be and could be, and to treat others in that way. To become fully who we are as our best selves. To open our hearts, engage our minds, nourish our spirits, and put our hands to work. That is how we transform ourselves and the world into a kinder, more just, and loving place. May it be so. And now, as we continue the celebration of our ingathering, and as we celebrate our community and our coming together for the new church year, we rejoice together in this ingathering. As we simultaneously let go of the old that doesn't serve us anymore to summon our new vision, I invite you to come forward in a moment for our ritual cleansing. Now, hand-washing rituals are part of many spiritual traditions of Judaism, of Shintoism, of paganism, and others. Some of us come here today feeling weary, or feeling overwhelmed, or sick. Others may be worried or stressed, dealing with loss, or unhappy. These are challenging times for many. So whatever weighs on your heart, we will use this moment to cleanse ourselves from anything that we want to believe, we want to leave behind to make room for a new possibility. Allow this hand washing to cleanse you of whatever does not contribute to your joy, to your hope, and to the greater good. Allow the water to renew and refresh your spirit so that together we may invite a radiant new vision for ourselves, for our faith, and for this community. As you come up in a moment, I invite you to take the jug, and making eye contact with the person behind you, pour a little water over their hands. Please say the following words to the person whose hands you are washing. May this water renew your spirit. And there's a card on the table with the words, so you don't have to memorize them. The person whose hands are being washed, hold their hands just above the bowl. The water poured onto your hands is just fresh for you. You can touch the water to your face or keep it on your hands. And after you've cleansed your hands, we will give you a towel to dry your hands. And then you will take the jug, turn around, and wash the next person's hands. By cleansing one another in this way, we create a web of interdependence and mutual care. In a moment, the worship associates and I will demonstrate. There are 3 stations, one here, one there, and one over there. And we invite 2 lines to come through the center aisle to these stations and 1 along the side to come to this station. But before we begin, I offer an invocation for this ritual. Gracious Spirit of life, may our expectations guide us to seek the best in life, but not set us up for disappointment. May we revel in the gifts of our faith, and may we always know that this community is a home, a place where we can return again and again for renewal, connection, and inspiration. May it be so.